Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a completely different approach to learning Python. Instead of just staring at abstract lines of code, we're going to treat Python like we're constructing a physical building. So think of this as getting your hands on the exact architectural blueprint you need to start building today. Because whether you're laying your very first brick or you're just reinforcing an existing structure, truly understanding the foundation of Python 3, it absolutely changes how you write code forever. We're kicking things off with this amazing quote from Donald Knuth because it sets the absolute perfect mindset for what we're doing today. Coding isn't just cold, hard math, and it's certainly not just mindless typing. It's a true art form. It takes real design, serious intention, and structural integrity. And today, we're going to master the foundational materials you need to actually produce those objects of beauty. Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We've got 6 crucial steps to construct this understanding. 1. The Python engine. 2. Grammar and syntax. 3. Objects and data ecosystem. 4. The operator toolkit. 5. Diagnostics and error handling. And finally, 6. Building your first script. Let's dive in. Section 1. The Python engine. Before we start writing anything, we need to take a quick peek into the engine room that makes Python run. So Python is a high-level language. And hey, fun fact, it was actually named after the British comedy troupe Monty Python, not the snake. The creator literally just wanted it to be fun to use. Anyway, being high level means it abstracts away all those incredibly complicated machine-level zeros and ones, which lets us read the source code almost like regular English. It's also an interpreted language, meaning the engine translates and executes your instructions line by line until it finishes, or, until it hits an error. It's highly portable too. Code written on a Mac is going to run seamlessly on Windows or Linux. But you really need to pay close attention to this next part. Python is strictly case sensitive. The word number in all caps is seen as a completely different object by the engine than number in lowercase. Precision really matters here. Now, to interact with this engine, you basically have 2 main execution modes, and knowing when to use which is a real game changer. Think of interactive mode as a flashlight. It gives you instant feedback, making it perfect for ephemeral testing and super quick calculations. Script mode, on the other hand, well, that's your floodlight. This is where you save your source code persistently for bulk execution. It's what you use to build actual program architecture and complex logic. You can actually literally see the difference right here. In interactive mode, you type 1 plus 2 into that prompt, hit enter, and boom, it instantly spits back 3. But in script mode, we're writing out multiple instructions, saving them all together as a .py file, and having the system execute the whole shebang all at once. Section 2. Grammar and syntax. Now that we've got a feel for the engine, let's figure out how to actually talk to it using its specific grammatical blueprint. Just like any spoken language, Python has nouns, verbs, and syntax. Think of keywords as the restricted verbs of the system, stuff like false, class, or none. These are strictly reserved for the interpreter. Identifiers, well, those are the nouns, the names you make up yourself for your variables and functions. But there are a few rules here. No special symbols except the underscore. They absolutely cannot start with a number, and, just to reiterate, they are case sensitive. Finally, we've got comments. You pop a hash symbol in front of your text, and these become your director's notes. They're documentation purely for you, the human architect. The machine completely ignores them. Section 3. Objects and data ecosystem. Let's head over to the materials tent and explore what we're actually gathering and manipulating on our construction site. Okay, this is absolutely crucial. We need to completely redefine what a variable actually is. If you've mussed around in other languages, you might have been taught that a variable is like a bucket where you store data. Well, in Python, that's entirely wrong. A variable is simply a tag, like a little sticky note or a name tag, that gets tethered to a specific object already sitting in the computer's memory. This concept of an identity tether is a massive aha moment for a lot of developers. Python actually creates variables automatically the first time you assign them. We call that implicit declaration. But here's the really cool part. Multiple tags can point to the exact same object in memory. So if num1 equals 20 and num2 calculates out to 20, they might both just point to the exact same memory ID block that represents the integer 20. The object is the block itself. The variables are just the sticky notes slapped onto it. Naturally, these objects come in a few different structural types, which makes up our data ecosystem. You've got your numbers, like integers for whole math, and floats for decimals. You have sequences for ordered items, so that's your strings of text, lists that you can alter, and tuples that are totally fixed. Then there are sets for unordered, unique items. You've got mapping, like dictionaries, which pair a key to a specific value. And of course, you have none, which represents a very deliberate, specific absence of any value at all. Now, taking a look at this mutation matrix reveals a really strict division in our data ecosystem: immutable versus mutable. Immutable types, like an integer, a float, or a string, are locked tight in a glass box. If you want to change a value from, say, 200 to 300, you literally cannot change the object itself. The tether snaps, and a brand new object is forged in memory. But mutable types, like a list, are more like open scaffolding. You can append new data directly to the structure, updating it in place without ever changing the object's core identity. Section 4. The Operator Toolkit. All right, materials are ready. Now we need the mathematical and logical tools to actually manipulate them on the assembly line. Python gives us a seriously robust toolkit here. For the math side, you've got arithmetic operators, your standard addition and multiplication, plus specialized tools like modulus for finding remainders or floor division. Then you've got relational operators for comparing values. And the one thing to remember about relational operators is that they always output a Boolean, just a simple true or false. Lastly, we have logical operators and, or, not, which you use to combine or flip those true and false logical states. When you start throwing constants, variables, and operators together, you create what's called an expression. I like to think of an expression like a factory assembly line. It takes all these complex pieces and processes them all the way down into one single value. But it strictly follows an order of precedence. Just like you learned in algebra, Python prioritizes multiplication and division before it even glances at subtraction. The machinery triggers in a very specific, totally predictable sequence until it hits that final evaluation. So, how do we make all this architecture interactive? We build a conversational loop. We use the print function to push data out to the user and the input function to pull data in from them. But pay super close attention to the golden rule here. The input function always returns a string, no matter what. Even if the user types the number 19, the system registers it as the text characters 1 and 9. You can't do math on it until you adapt that material first. Section 5. Diagnostics and error handling. Look, you're inevitably going to try to do math on a text string at some point, so every good builder expects to make mistakes. Let's look at diagnostics. In programming, debugging is not a failure. For sure, it's just a totally normal, expected diagnostic step in the engineering process. You're mostly going to run into 3 types of errors. Syntax errors are just grammatical mistakes, maybe a missing bracket or a simple typo. The blueprint is unreadable, so the program doesn't even start. Runtime errors happen when the code starts up just fine, but then crashes mid-execution because you asked it to do something literally impossible, like divide by 0. And finally, logical errors. These are the sneaky ones. The code is grammatically flawless, the program runs perfectly, but it spits out the completely wrong answer because, well, the human logic behind it was flawed. Section 6. Building your first script. Okay, let's move to our final stage and see how all of this builds into a functioning whole. Time to synthesize the code. Let's break down the anatomy of the script to really synthesize everything we've covered today. Up on line 1, we've got our human-readable comment. Line 2 is a variable assignment, acting as a tether to an integer object. Line 3 uses explicit typecasting. Remember that golden rule about inputs being strings? Well, here, we wrap our input string inside an int function to actually forge it into usable math material. Line 5 is our expression assembly line, beautifully following precedence to calculate the total. And line 6 is our output loop, proudly displaying the final result. It's just all the pieces working together in perfect harmony. And just like that, the foundation is officially poured. Let's do a quick recap checklist. You now know that Python acts as a translator between human logic and machine action. You understand that literally everything in Python is an object residing in memory, with its own specific data type and identity. You know that variables are just sticky note tethers pointing to those objects. And you understand that building robust architecture requires input and output loops, type awareness, and rigorous debugging. You now possess the actual vocabulary to read, write, and diagnose Python as a complete functioning system. So, with the foundation solidly set and your toolkit fully stocked, the next step is entirely in your hands. You hold the blueprint. The syntax is firmly established. I'm just going to leave you with this final thought. What architectural masterpiece are you going to construct first?